And what a lovely morning. Good morning.
Good morning. We've talked the whole night through.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
And we say good morning to you. You're listening to Power Talks with Beth Ann and Melody Cedarstrom in the morning, where talk is real. Truth is in the talk, and there is absolute power in truth. And we say good morning after a weekend. Good morning, Melody.
And good morning to you, and good morning to the listeners. The big news today is that the deep freeze is over here on the eastern shore. Oh boy, was it cold.
Yeah, and it has warmed up a little bit here in the flyover state as well. It was 33 when I walked in this morning, so I'm right across from the bank, and they have a little thermometer on the bank there, so it was 33 degrees this morning, and I thought, well, I don't need this stocking hat and these gloves. We're glad it's over for a little while. I'm sure winter's not done with us.
We ended up with a recorded somewhere around a foot of snow, and it certainly is. We were in a state of emergency until Saturday morning or afternoon before they took it off, and that keeps people off the road, because if you have a tendency to get stuck, there's big fines. They fine you, and so people stay off the roads. And I'll tell you, they didn't plow my road until yesterday, and so it was very. It was, because, we don't get this type of snow often, and certainly then the little cities along the shore are certainly ill-prepared for this type of weather. But it was extremely cold. Power stayed on, so I didn't lose power over the weekend, and the only one that seemed to really bother was my little doggie, taking her out in the snow. She didn't like that cold on her little paws, but we
booties for her?
No. She's gonna be a big girl. She's
gonna be tough. Good. Like you go out. You're tough. A big girl. Do you go out there barefoot?
I went out in flip-flops. Does that count?
I know you probably did.
So not the whole time, but not when it was 0 degrees. I didn't. But so anyway, that's the big news. Even the Sahara Desert was covered in 15 inches of snow as a freak weather blankets the sand dunes, and more than 15 inches. That's amazing. It's the second time snow has hit in nearly 40 years, with a dusting also recorded in December of 2016. So the second time you had this much snow in 40 years, back-to-back years. It's kind of interesting. So
I believe it was Joe had called in last week and was talking about the record cold that we were having, and said it was back in, he thought it was either 83 or 84, and I'm saying yes, it was, because in 83, in December, it was bitter cold, and there was ice, and there was snow, and we even lost lights a little while there around the Christmas time, and that's when my house burned down. That's why I remember it so vividly, because it was so cold and snowy, and yet that house, the ashes smoldered for weeks, regardless of the snow and the cold. That's how hot the fire got, and so that's why I remember it. And I don't know if there was another record year after that, but I do remember that 83 and 84. Speaking of December and January, at that time was really bad here in the state of Missouri. So it was misery here in the state of Missouri back then.
State of misery.
Misery.
Last night they had the, I don't know, some award. Which award won? Which award dinner was it?
Yeah, it was something. I don't watch.
It was one of them. I don't remember which one it was.
And they were all going to wear black in mourning for all the harassment and sexual assault that women have had to endure.
Yeah, I didn't even want to. But the most disturbing that came out of that is NBC, Oprah, our future president. That's disturbing.
She's not our future president.
That is disturbing. Her boyfriend, Stedman, says she would do it. And I'll tell you what, in today's wacky world of politics, she could pull it off possibly. I can't imagine.
Well, she has enough money to buy it, sure.
Enough money to buy it, absolutely.
But
so
she's not presidential material.
Well, they kind of... I don't think that matters anymore.
And I'm not talking because she doesn't act presidential. I'm saying she doesn't have what it takes to do what needs to be done as president of the United States.
I don't think there's any president we've elected in the past that has had that resume. They're puppets anyway. So, I mean, the majority of them are puppets to some degree. So, she'd just be the other puppet that would be able to, and you're right, she's got the money.
Well, she's too busy with her diet company right now. So
I hope so. I truly hope so.
I didn't watch any of that. I watched them as they were rolling out their own red carpet, and I just, they showed that in some kind of, it's just craziness. I'm done with Hollywood. They're the last people in the world that I want to tell me how to live, because they haven't got their act together. You got to get your house together before you can tell somebody else how to live, and I'm just done with them. They're just a bunch of pious, conceited, vain people that I have very little respect for. There's a few of them there that aren't into that scene, but not very many.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one thing that with Trump being president, it really has shown colors to a lot of these people. It shows their true colors of who these people are and what they really desire. But, everybody said that Trump couldn't win, so if she sticks her mind to it, if the Democrats get behind her, I don't think they would. I don't think the Democrats would get behind her. But anyway.
I know they want to win awful bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I never said Trump couldn't win. I never said that. So you said everybody, but I didn't say that.
Well, mainstream media had said Trump couldn't win. And I think it was a surprise that he did get as far as he did in the very beginning, as far as, the very first when you had 16 of them on stage, the debates, the 6, I don't think
17 of them.
Whatever.
Counting him.
17, yeah. I don't think anybody thought that, that he would be president at that point in time.
Well, first of all, that was too many people wanting to be president, but
absolutely.
It's
just a waste of time as far as I'm concerned.
And let's not call those debates. They're not debates.
No. I'm just saying what the mainstream calls them.
All right. So. Yeah, they name them that. Well, so did Fox. I consider them about mainstream anymore. Don't take me wrong, but I think they've tapped into a different faucet, a different way to get the money, and I see too many of them. I watched last night. I watched something last night I really liked. And you may disagree with me, but I really liked it. And I want to contact these guys. Not that they would give me the time of day, but I watched Chris Wallace, which I don't like, and how he approaches interviews. And he is anything but a conservative. He's as phony as a $3 bill. And I would say that to his face. I don't like the way he conducts interviews. He definitely pushes it to one side, the side that he wants, how he wants them to answer, or how he's going to try and trap them in an answer. And so I watched that. But I watched something last night, and I wasn't really going to bring it up on our show because I was going to talk about it in length on the next show on Common Sense Coalition, CSC Talk Radio. But the Wise Guys, I like the way they conducted their talk. And I don't know if you watched it or if you've ever watched it or if it was new. I've never seen them before, so I don't know. I'm assuming it might be a new one. Or maybe it's just new that they're airing it on Sunday night. Maybe it's on some other time during the day or week. But it had Dr. Bill Bennett. It had He was the moderator. It had CEO Steve Wynn. It had Colonel Oliver North on there. And I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He was White House press secretary at one time, Ari Fleischer. Mm-hmm. And the Harvard law professor, Alan Dershowitz. Now, this was, we know how Alan feels about things. I mean, Alan is very vocal, and I for the life of me, I can't understand. He called himself a libertarian on this in this panel, but he also says I'm very liberal. But I just liked how they approached their conversations, because it wasn't like they were trying to disagree and slam each other, but it was more like they were trying to come to a conclusion, come to a solution. And they all seemed to agree on some of the issues, and they didn't agree on everything. But they agreed to disagree on some things. But I liked the way that they went about it without screaming at one another. And, one topic that came up was the problem of the family in the United States of America, the breaking down of the family. And I thought, I don't know if you've ever watched them. I liked how it was conducted, and I plan on watching them again and see if they continue to do that the same way. And like I said, I'd really like to contact some of them and have them on. I'd like to talk to them, even if I only get to talk on the phone and don't get to have them on the air. Because the thing that was missing there was the forgotten man and woman. Now, they were talking about why, they didn't want to slam Trump. They weren't after that. They mentioned the NFL. They mentioned some other things that had been issues of late. But they didn't want to get into personalities and that kind of thing necessarily. I thought, obviously, they all knew each other, and they kind of clowned around a little bit once in a while, but maybe not as much as you and I do. But it was the way they conducted the interview or their panel. They were sitting around a round table, which is what I have here in my studio. I always say it's like sitting around the kitchen table, drinking a cup of coffee, and trying to solve the problems without getting angry at everyone. And that's something that has disturbed me in the last several weeks, Melody, is that you sit there and watch them, whether it's Tucker Carlson or even Chris Wallace on a Sunday or Sean Hannity, and even Lou Dobbs, they'll just start screaming at one another, whoever's on the panel. And they don't have any kind of a heart for a solution. They just want to yell about the politics. They just want to yell and scream, and that, to me, that's a distraction. To me, it teaches me that all they care about are the parties, and they don't care about the people. But I didn't get that on this panel watching them last night, and I didn't know if you saw that or not.
We've been around. It's been a divide and conquer. And I think we've seen it everywhere in our politics.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't see people sitting down and talking. You can agree to disagree. Mm-hmm. But right away, it's our view and no one else is correct or right. And I think that is, all part of the agenda. And it's been going on for a very long time. And when you look at Fox, I don't know how different they are from the way they used to be. It's all about money. They were the opposite. They provided a platform for those who are on, quote unquote, the other side. I hear music, and it's getting something louder.
He's trying to. I want to just mention a little bit. When we come back, I want to mention just a little bit more. We have other important things to talk about besides listening to other people talk. But something that you said there sparked me to share something that I heard them say on the panel. You're listening to Power Talks. Your calls are welcome at 717-300-1218. That's 717-300.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we have returned. You're listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning. I don't even think we need commercials. Melody and I keep going through the commercials. We just keep talking. But I was going to, she had mentioned that they have an agenda, and I'm trying to think exactly what you said as we were heading into that break. But the wise guys that I watched, and I mentioned who they were, I felt that they were genuine. I felt that they were really trying to find a solution. And of course, yes, we know both sides have an agenda. Both sides are corrupt. And I'm not necessarily talking about these 5 individuals on this panel. I'm talking about the Republican Party, and I'm talking about the Democrat Party. And we have seen, you know, just like you had said at the beginning of the show, if the Trump administration has done nothing else, he definitely has exposed the hypocrisy, whether it's in Hollywood or whether it's in D.C. with the D.C. occupiers. But obviously, go ahead.
And I just wonder, then you can finish, he has exposed it, or has it really been the American voter who has exposed it?
Oh, there you go.
You know, this is what they're afraid of. They're not afraid of Trump. They're afraid of the American people, because you can't take that away from the American people. The American people spoke up for the first time in eons. And so that is what they're afraid of. That's what it's all about.
I agree. And when we're talking about we're talking about, at least I think we are, we're talking about the D.C. occupiers. These guys here on this panel, they're not afraid of the American people because they don't have to rely on the American people.
I'm talking about the elite, the bigger scheme of things.
Yes.
The elite, they control D.C. and so forth, and these people were supposed to go to Washington and protect us against the elite, but they haven't. But they've been doing it for years, hundreds of years.
Oh, yeah.
I have I don't know if I can find it up here, but it was a paper, it was a book written by a guy by the name of Patman, and he was a congressman.
Okay.
Back in the early 60s, and he wrote this in 1964. And this is when, guess what happened in 1964? They took us off the silver. They closed, and the coins were no longer minted in silver. But what he talks us about is Congress was to be there to control the Feds, to control the Federal Reserve, and they failed. They gave up our whole system over to the Federal Reserve System. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is it goes back further than just this administration, the last administration, the administration before that, before.
It goes back 100 and some years.
It goes back a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since this country was created, there's been this battle.
Well, as long as you have man, you're going to have this kind of battle, because it's a battle for power.
Yes.
And that is just what has always been, a battle for power, a battle for attention, a battle for money. And power isn't always money, but it is money as well. But
no, it
what's that?
Power and money.
Power and money, but they're not necessarily the same. They can be, but they're not necessarily the same. Excuse me, I caught a cold this weekend. But Dershowitz had hoped that the pendulum is swinging, and he said we've got too much radical on the left and too much radical on the right, and he was hoping that it would swing to the middle, and he said it's up to us to make it do that, and I agree with that up to a certain point. It depends on how, far right, what he's calling far right, those of us who just keep screaming about the Constitution and liberty and all this and that. But times have changed. There is things, and they talked about the technology, the robots that are coming in and the jobs, but they talked about the morality. They talked about the family breaking down and the fathers that are not present when these children are being raised. They talked about a lot of things. They talked about the NFL, and the one, I can't remember which one he was, he said they're not SOBs. He said, but they are misguided. He said they were wrong in what they were doing, and it goes back to that they are being fed a bunch of lies. You and I know that, and I think these guys know this, and they talked about how pro athletics is going to die out because people are sick and tired of them bringing in the politics and the money that it takes. You can't take a family to go see a football game or a baseball game anymore without giving up all your vacation money or giving up something because it's so expensive. And but Little League and that kind of thing, grandparents would rather go see the kids play at the Little League than they would go see a pro ball game. And I found out something, Melody, when you get to be my age, they let you in free. and they were being very kind about it, and I said, it bothers me a little bit that you didn't card me, but anyway.
Bring me a walker, right? Jeez.
No, they want the grandparents involved, so the grandparents were allowed to come in free to basketball games and that kind of thing, which I didn't know before. It hadn't happened before. But anyway, people are leaning more towards that in the college and all this and that out of the pro game. But I liked the show. I thought that the panel was down to earth. I thought, as much as these filthy rich people can be, I thought they were trying to keep the conversation civil and still approach certain things. In fact, the one guy said, okay, now we've all agreed that the family, the breaking down of the family is a big problem. how do we come to a solution? That's not a government solution, is it? And they all agreed it wasn't a government solution. And that's part of the problem is the government, everybody thinks the government can solve everything, and of course the government is usually the one who causes the problems.
You know, when you were talking of sports, it was reminding me of an old article. Oh my gosh, I bet it goes back 25 years, and basically I can remember the title and I can remember the gist of it, and it was about baseball. And it was when we're talking 25 years ago when you're talking about the prices that people couldn't afford, and they said that the baseball would price themselves out of the game and out of the, to the point where it would collapse. But the title was when baseball's no longer, this country is no longer. And they related the baseball with the prices in relationship to where we're headed as a government. And it really was it was just touched me and it's true. And we're here today. Look at what's happening in our sports.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's a sign. It's also the sign of where we are as a country.
And you can look in history and see that. Go back into the history of Rome and how they paid the athletes exorbitant amounts of money. It was all about distractions, and it was all about entertainment. And, that was something that happened before Rome fell. Now, 25 years ago isn't that long ago, because that's when I had my little ones, and it was just next to impossible to afford to go to a baseball game, and I think we maybe went to one or two baseball games when those kids were little, and we sat in the nosebleed section, and where the cheapest it was, and you can't carry in a bottle of water, you can't do anything to supplement. You got to buy everything there, and of course it's terrible expensive to even buy a hot dog or anything else there. And we walk in there with 7 mouths, 5 children. You just can't afford it. At least the average American can't afford it. Let's put it that way. And I think we were average, maybe a little below average because we had 5 children. But it's a deal, that's for sure.
But yeah, so it's in relationship to again, look at they're misguided, and so yeah, it's everything is tied to it's just a web. And if we don't have anyone killing that spider,
some spiders have really neat webs, bigger. And other spiders have really confused-looking webs.
Yes.
This one is confused-looking web. You don't know what. You're just caught no matter which way you go. So.
What's next?
Well, we have a caller. Oh. We have John in Ohio. John, how are you today?
Oh, pretty good. Before I get into my point, I think something that would give it a broader perspective is some sites like globalresearch.ca, globalresearch.ca, and a very impressive video by a Pastor Charles E. Carlson, and it's called The Tragedy and the Turning. And it brings out that he has spent decades trying to arouse people's understanding of the terrible, unbalanced power of the Zionist lobby over our government and media. And much of it has been accomplished by falsifications of the Schofield Bible. That goes back to nearly 100 years ago, where the Zionists at that time conspired with British colonialism to gain the Balfour Declaration and take over Palestine. And it was based on false liner notes. It wasn't really part of the Bible, but it was just littered through all the margins and footnotes that were supposed to be helpful, that created this little phrase, if you don't support everything that Israel does in wanting us to go to war against Iraq and Syria and Libya, God will curse you. And it's a total hoax. But if you check that, The Tragedy and the Turning, Carlson. It's a very effective video, and he's a pastor himself, and he finds the so-called Christian Zionist of the United States a very dangerous voting bloc, because they vote as a bloc for anything that Israel wants, and that is one of the worst things we could be voting for. That was one of the connections to that program you're talking about. Alan Dershowitz is a long-time lobbyist for the Zionist lobby. He has justified everything they do. He's openly called for torture and tried to justify it. These are not conservative things. These are violations of freedom, liberty, and the Constitution. And the other person that was mentioned was this Oliver North. That person should be. Did you see this
panel? Did you watch this panel, John?
I didn't see it, but I just realized that you.
Okay, I think we lost him. I'd rather you watch the panel before you start making personal opinions on each one as an individual. And yes, Oliver North was in the military, and yes, Alan Dershowitz is Jewish. There was a panel of several different guys there, and the panel was actually talking about something totally different than what you were bringing up. We have Lance in Texas. Lance, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing good, ladies. How are y'all?
I'm good. What's on your mind, sir?
Well, I think the term you're looking for is bread and circuses. You were talking about Rome. And the fall of Rome. And how many comparisons can we draw to our current situation? Endless.
Endless. You're absolutely right.
So I think that's a big point to make. Bread and circuses. They're all distracted. They're all discombobulated.
Yep.
They don't even realize this. I think it was. I can't remember the quote, but I can remember the quote. There are none so hopelessly enslaved as those who falsely believe themselves free, and that's what we got.
You're absolutely correct.
I wrote an article about that. Land of pretending. We're pretending that we're free. And, the young people coming up, they don't even understand what liberty is. They don't understand. We celebrate the 4th of July, and we don't even understand what independence is, because we've got all these, whether they're on the Republican side or the Democrat side, all these policies that they want to push through for more government control. More government's going to fix this problem. And the more we have of that, the less we have of independence and liberty. And
freedom.
It bothers me that so many people do not see that. And, government can't fix a problem. Government is the problem. and the problem are the D.C. occupiers in Congress. Yeah, presidents come and presidents go, but Congress stays and stays and plays. And
that's the problem, too.
It is a big problem. And that was one thing on this panel that they talked about, and it was actually Oliver North that brought it up. He said he named the year that they started putting limits on the presidential position. He said, when are we going to do that to Congress? And, of course, that became a big problem when we changed how we elect senators. But, yeah, they just stay and they stay. How many have been in there for a lifetime? And what can we actually say?
Look at Orrin Hatch. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
All of them.
And now we're going to get Mitt Romney. He's really a conservative about small government, isn't he? That was facetious if you didn't hear that. If you didn't.
You mean mittens, don't you? That's
yeah.
Mittens. I don't know why. But John made a great point about
he gets in there, it'll be the rest of us that lost our mittens, that's for sure.
Right. John made a great point with the Zionists. And here to clarify, not all Zionists are Jews. Some of them are Christians, some are pagans. They're really just thieves. they're a big part of of the influence on our government as well, which is the bread and circuses. Where did that come from? Well, the media.
Well, they don't have to be Zionists. They don't have to be Zionists to be that way. It's from the beginning of time, man has fought over power. And it is the nature of man, and don't have to be a Zionist, you don't have to be this or have to be that, just human, because they fight over power. And that's what it's all about.
It's the duplicity of men and women.
Careful
thanks,
now.
ladies.
Thank you, Lance.
All righty, thanks, Lance. Appreciate it. I mean, a lot of these things do have deep roots. So I get that. And, yeah. So I get what both John and Lance are saying, and it's and what you bring up is about our youth, and what they're being told, what they're being taught, and you have to look to the parents. The parents are slipping, because they've. You could just go on and list the problems, but you're right. How do we solve this? How do we protect this? It is by education. Certainly, that's what we try to do in all the programs. But, and a lot when you see these people talk, to me, it's interesting. It's interesting to see people sit down and actually talk about it. But until, and I like Bill Bennett. I've always liked him.
He was the moderator, so he was kind of keeping it. And, of course,
and he's the one I like the most out of them all. I don't put any of them on a high scale of, but, I do like Bill Bennett, and
we go back, we talk about what the youth haven't been taught. And, of course, it would be our generation that didn't teach them. And, Bill Bennett, a great guy, but he was in the Department of Education, and we know that the Department of Education has had issues for sure. And I'm going back to this little jingle or rhyme or poem or whatever you want to call it, because it is the nature of mankind. It doesn't matter what nationality you are, it doesn't matter what religion you are, the nature of humankind, from bondage to spiritual faith. We turn to God or a God when we're in bondage. When things are rough, we look up. All of a sudden, we look up. And from spiritual faith to great courage. And from courage, we get that liberty. From liberty to abundance. From abundance to complacency. From complacency back to apathy. And from apathy to dependence. And from dependence, we're back to bondage. It is a cycle, and it is the nature of man. Doesn't matter to me what religion you are, what nationality you are, what color you are. This is the nature of man, and we have to guard against that, and it's tough to guard against human nature.
Well, sure, and they use the human nature as far as the way they're able to manipulate and to guide us down through, to where we are today. We have Joe calling us from Arkansas. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Joe.
I wanted to make good morning, Melody and Beth M. I wanted to make this. You were talking about people struggling for power and fighting for power and this kind of stuff. I just wanted to make this observation on our country and our government and that particular subject. And that's this. As the country started out, with the Constitution limiting the power so much, of government so much, there wasn't all that much power at stake in elections and in politics. Somebody won an election, that didn't give them all that much power or all that much money and so on like that. So maybe, probably politics has always been, very hostile and very a lot of fighting and this kind of stuff. But I think politics has gotten, fiercer and less friendly in recent decades. And I think part of the reason for that, a big part of the reason for that might be that as the government has more and more become big government, exceeding its constitutional limitations, the power at stake in every election gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so naturally people would tend to fight harder over that larger sphere of power that they get if they do get into the government. It's like if the ownership of a $10 bill is in dispute, people might not fight all that hard over it because $10 isn't all that much. But if there's $1 million at stake, then you would probably expect people would fight, a lot harder if they think that they're entitled to that $1 million. So I wanted to make that observation that, as the government more and more exceeds its constitutional limitations and gets more and more to be big government, then there's more power at stake in every election. Therefore, the fighting for control of that power, I suppose, can be expected to get fiercer and fiercer and, more and more hostile and less friendly and civil. I would think so.
I think you're absolutely right in that respect, and I do think that they have a fear, like Melody said. They're scared of the people. It's when they're attacking Trump, it's not Trump they really hate. It's the American people, us deplorables. That how dare we elect somebody like that? How dare we say in your face, we'll tell you what we're going to do. Everybody was upset at the Republicans. They were mad at the Republicans. And, so they told us they were going to do such and such, and then we elected them, and they didn't do it, and so people were upset with them. And that's the reason President Donald Trump got elected. And we continue to give the Republicans the majority, but are they going to keep it or not? It's right now people are pretty upset with them because of what they've been doing to the president that was elected. And you can call the Democrats out on it if you want to, but it's the Republicans just as much as it has been the Democrats. But anyway, I agree with you, Joe. Those who have more to lose.
What you were saying, what you were saying about the people electing Trump. Now, I read one really great author on all these things that he said once you come out of your state of denial, you'll find that you can't go back in. So it seems like the American people did come out of their state of being deceived, being in denial about reality, about how things really are in this country, enough to elect Donald Trump, which would seem to be a good indication that they're not going to go back in, and that whatever, revolution, new turning of direction there was created by the election of Trump and by the people being awake enough to reject the establishment candidates and elect Trump, that's hopefully and probably that's going to grow and grow and grow, and they're not going to be able to turn back this awakening of the American people. Hopefully it's going to be that way.
Well, hopefully people like Melody and Beth Ann and some of these others that are sitting here talking about it, we can keep it in the earshot. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate your call. We're heading into a break. Your calls are welcome at 717-300-1218, 717-300-1218, and Melody and Beth Ann will be right back.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our Listen and Schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we have returned. You're listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning. We are in the final segment of today's show. It is Monday, by the way. It is Monday, January the 8th. We're soon going to be past January. Just can't believe how fast the years fly. I guess that's a sign you're getting old.
No, you know what? It's a sign that there's so much going on. And I always said, hey, I want to slow down time. I'm going to go to my dentist and ask him to drill on my teeth. That always slows down time. It doesn't seem like it
takes forever.
It takes forever. But I think there's just so much going on. It's just like everything is speeding up. You know, from politics to our economy to, you know, it used to be just our little world in the area that we lived in. Now we're talking about things that are going all around the world. They're impacted from all around the world. There's news being followed from, you know, impacts on, you know, I mean, you know, there's a lot of dangerous things that are going on around this world, and it just makes time speed up also. So if you want to slow down time, go get a boring book and slow it down. But it certainly is speeding. But I'm not going to blame it on old age is my point, or getting older.
No, okay. No, we'll blame it on other things.
We're going to blame it on...
And going back to this panel, they mentioned that social media, well, it has made the world even smaller. We've always said it's a small world, but social media has even made it smaller, and it's made problems bigger. Problems that really aren't that big, it's made them bigger.
True.
And they were talking about how that in and of itself is disturbing because it says, I have this feeling that things appear to be worse than they are at the moment, and that allowing for the fact that there's some very, very disturbing things going on. And because things seem worse than they really are, we see a lot more reactions. Is that the way to explain that? We see people reacting, you know, to things that it's really not that bad. Step back, take a look at it, calm down. But we don't see that happening. And I think social media plays a big part in that. And he was saying that, you know, looking back in things in our history, he says, I see this, that you know, that things are not as, they appear worse than they really are. Not that there isn't some bad things going on. He wasn't saying that, but that they're making mountains out of molehills, and they just keep on, and people will react, and not necessarily in a good way. And I think we've seen that with the rioting and the things that were going on even after the election. You know, nobody was going to give anybody a chance. No, this is just bad. You know, we've got to do something about it. When did we become a nation that didn't accept an election? Now, you and I both know that there is fraud going on in our elections, but you know, we've been going down where there's reason to be upset, and it's not necessarily that. The reason to be upset is because of what Congress has continued to do. They shirk their responsibilities, and they do the things they don't need to be doing or shouldn't be doing, and that is costing us an awful lot as the American people. It's costing this nation. We're in debt because of what they've done with the monetary system going back over 100 years. You know, I wrote an article for Melody's newsletter for Discount Gold and Silver, And I think I mentioned it briefly last Friday that I had this tune in my head, there's a stranger in my house. And that stranger is, they're not accepting what's here. You know, they don't like the house, but they want the house to take care of them. Anyway, I agreed with these guys, not 100%, but what impressed me with the panel was that they seemed to be civil. Instead of yelling and screaming at each other, they seem to at least want to find a solution to issues. And of course, I know that they're probably all globalists, but I was trying to be, you know, to me it was a breath of fresh air because they weren't screaming at one another. I see these, especially these females that get on that are on one side or the other, and that's all they do is scream, and nobody's going to convince anybody else of something else, and neither one of them have it 100% right. In my opinion. But anyway, I'll turn it over to you, Melody.
Oh, thanks.
You're most welcome. You know, I didn't intend for us to talk about that panel the whole entire show, and it really was something that I watched it twice last night. And anyway.
Well, you know, my family, they're, you know, my cousin says he's which I kind of chuckle because I don't think there is such a thing, but he says he's a how does he say it? He's a social liberal, but a fiscal conservative.
Who's that?
My family.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And but the thing that we do is we sit down and we talk. Mm-hmm. We don't, you know, we talk and we discuss things. I present my side, he presents his side. You know, and that's, I think, how you change, you know, for us on the conservative side, how we change their views. And it's amazing how many times he'll say, well, you know, I agree. So like you said, sometimes there's not a whole lot of difference. Sure, when we get to the social, you know, with the, you're not going to change their mind on abortion. You try, but it's difficult. You're not going to change their mind on a lot of the social elements of going on, of the begin, you know, what's going on. But when you talk a little bit more about politics, and maybe that's a start. So when you talked about this group, and I'll tell you, when I talk, you know, when we don't get into these discussions often, but when we do, I'm the Lone Ranger. Okay, I'm the one that's battling, you know.
Do you have a silver bullet? You do, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And so it can be refreshing to see people discuss the problems instead of calling each other names and, you know, telling you know, you're crazy, and you really don't come to the, you know, any, you know, just acting civilly to one another anymore. I mean, we've lost that. You know, it's either I'm right, you're wrong. And I do believe where we're at, it's why I've been doing these programs for 25 years, why I believe in gold and silver. I believe in our republic. There is no other, there isn't anything else to change my mind on that. We are correct. We are right. And so, anyway, it's a constant battle.
It is a constant battle.
It's, and that's, and it is schools that, I mean, there's so many areas that have fallen that, you know, when you talk about the youth, I mean, hey, if Bernie Sanders would have replaced Hillary, I have no doubt he'd probably be president, because you would have had.
I agree. I agree.
And why? Because of socialism. They don't get it.
One thing that was said on the panel was Bennett was talking about the education and what they're not teaching in, you know, and of course he was talking about morals as well, you know, integrity and morals and that kind of thing. And Dershowitz said, I disagree with you because he says they're not going to be teaching them what you want them to be taught. And I thought that was, you know, great coming from him because he's a liberal, and he's saying they're not going to be teaching what you want them to teach them. And he says, I don't want them teaching them how to think. What to think. They need to be teaching them the facts and let them come to conclusions. But instead, they're pushing agendas, and even he knows this. And he apparently doesn't like it. And I consider him a pretty leftist guy. He said he voted for Clinton.
Yeah.
He said that a long time ago. He wrote this book. He's gotten rich off the book he wrote for Donald Trump. But he said, I'm not afraid of the president. I'm afraid of what's coming up with the youth. And I think he sees, you're not going to agree on all the social issues, obviously. But I think he does believe in liberty. We ought to have some kind of a common denominator. Well, everybody has to eat. They may have a different definition of liberty, but I think that they do. He does believe in the Constitution, but he was saying, too, that they were talking about lots of different things. If you can go online and watch it if you have a moment, you ought to do that, because I think, I don't know, I thought it was refreshing that they weren't screaming at one another. But they weren't agreeing either necessarily on every issue either.
Well, I hear the music.
I do too. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The day is gone. The hour is over. We will be back tomorrow with Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning. And we hope you have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern, or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.